What is up, everybody? We are on day 110 of our Bible in a Year series, reading through the CSB, Christian Standard Bible, and we're in 2 Kings still, chapter 16 today, and we will dive straight in. Chapter 16. In the 17th year of Pekah, son of Remaliah, Ahaz, son of Jotham, became king of Judah. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 16 years in Jerusalem. He did not do what was right in the sight of the Lord his God, like his ancestor David, but he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel. He even sacrificed his son in the fire, imitating the detestable practices of the nations the Lord had dispossessed before the Israelites. He sacrificed and burned incense on the high places, on the hills, and under every green tree. Then Aram's king Rezin and Israel's king Pekah, son of Remaliah, came to wage war against Jerusalem. They besieged Ahaz, but were not able to conquer him. At that time, Aram's king Rezin recovered Elath for Aram and expelled the Judahites from Elath. Then the Arameans came to Elath, and they still live there today. So Ahaz sent messengers to King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria, saying, "I am your servant and your son." Saying, "I am your servant and your son. March up and save me from the grasp of the king of Aram and of the king of Israel, who are rising up against me." Ahaz also took the silver and gold found in the Lord's temple and in the treasuries of the king's palace, and sent them to the king of Assyria as a bribe. So the king of Assyria listened to him and marched up to Damascus and captured it. He deported its people to Kir, but put Rezin to death. King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria. When he saw the altar that was in Damascus, King Ahaz sent a model of the altar and complete plans for its construction to the priest Uriah. Uriah built the altar according to all the instructions King Ahaz sent from Damascus. Therefore, by the time King Ahaz came back from Damascus, the priest Uriah or Uriah, I think it's Uriah now, had completed it. When the king came back from Damascus, he saw the altar. Then he approached the altar and ascended it. He offered his burnt offering and his grain offering, poured out his drink offering, and splattered the blood of his fellowship offerings on the altar. He took the bronze altar that was before the Lord in front of the temple between his altar and the Lord's temple, and put it on the north side of his altar. The king Ahaz commanded the priest Uriah, "Offer on the great altar the morning burnt offering, the evening grain offering, and the king's burnt offering and his grain offering. Also offer the burnt offering of all the people of the land, their grain offering and their drink offerings. Splatter on the altar all the blood of the burnt offering and all the blood of sacrifice. Bronze altar will be for me to seek guidance." The priest Uriah did everything King Ahaz commanded. Then King Ahaz cut off the frames of the water carts and removed the bronze basin from each of them. He took the basin from the bronze oxen that were under it and put it on a stone pavement. To satisfy the king of Assyria, he removed from the Lord's temple the Sabbath canopy they had built in the palace as he closed the outer entrance for the king. The rest of the events of Ahaz's reign, along with his accomplishments, are written in the historical record of Judah's kings. Ahaz rested with his ancestors and was buried with his ancestors in the city of David, and his son Hezekiah became king in his place. Chapter 17. In the 12th year of Judah's king Ahaz, Hosea, son of Elah, became king over Israel and Samaria, and he reigned 9 years. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight, but not like the kings of Israel who preceded him. King Shalmaneser of Assyria attacked him, and Hoshea became his vassal and paid him tribute. But the king of Assyria caught Hoshea in a conspiracy. He had sent envoys, how do we say that, to So, king of Egypt, and had not paid tribute. He had sent envoys to So, king of Egypt, and not paid tribute to the king of Assyria as in previous years. Therefore, the king of Assyria arrested him and put him in prison. The king of Assyria invaded the whole land, marched up to Samaria, and besieged it for 3 years. In the ninth year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria. He deported the Israelites to Assyria and settled them in Halah along the harbor, along the Gozan's river, and in the cities of the Medes. The disaster happened because the people of Israel sinned against the Lord their God, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt from the power of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And because they worshipped other gods, they lived according to the customs of the nations that the Lord had dispossessed before the Israelites. And according to what the king of Israel did, the Israelites secretly did things against the Lord their God that were not right. They built high places in all their towns, from watchtower to fortified city. They set up for themselves sacred pillars and Asherah poles on every high hill and under every green tree. They burned incense there on all the high places, just like the nations of the Lord had driven out before them had done. They did evil things, angering the Lord. They served idols, although the Lord had told them, "You must not do this." Still, the Lord warned Israel and Judah through every prophet and every seer, saying, "Turn from your evil ways and keep my commands and statutes according to the whole law I commanded your ancestors and sent to you through my servants, the prophets." But they would not listen. Instead, they became obstinate like their ancestors who did not believe the Lord their God. They rejected his statutes and his covenant he made with their ancestors and the warnings he had given them. They followed worthless idols and became worthless themselves, following the surrounding nations the Lord had commanded them not to imitate. They abandoned the commands of the Lord their God. They made cast images for themselves, two calves. Again, they always seem to go back to these golden calves and an Asherah pole. They bowed in worship to all the stars in the sky and served Baal. They sacrificed their sons and daughters in the fire and practiced divination and interpreted omens. They devoted themselves to what was evil in the Lord's sight and angered him. Therefore, the Lord was very angry with Israel, and he removed them from his presence. Only the tribe of Judah remained. Even Judah did not keep the commands of the Lord their God, but he lived according to the customs Israel had practiced. So the Lord rejected all the descendants of Israel, punished them, and handed them over to plunderers until he had banished them from his presence. When the Lord tore Israel from the house of David, Israel made Jeroboam, son of Nebat, king. Then Jeroboam led Israel away from the following the Lord had a Lord and caused them to commit grave sin. The Israelites persisted in all the sins that Jeroboam committed and did not turn away from them. Finally, the Lord removed Israel from his presence, just as he had declared through all his servants the prophet. So Israel has been exiled to Assyria from their homeland to this very day. Then the king of Assyria brought people from Babylon, Cutha, Ava, Hamath, and Sepharvaim, and settled them in place of the Israelites in the cities of Samaria. The settlers took possession of Samaria and lived in its cities. When they first lived there, they did not fear the Lord, so the Lord sent lions among them, which killed some of them. The settlers said to the king of Assyria, "The nations that have deported in place the nations that you have deported and placed in the cities of Samaria do not know the requirements of the God of the land. Therefore, he has sent lions among them that are killing them, because the people don't know the requirements of the God of the land." Then the king of Assyria issued a command: send back the one of the priests you deported. Have him go and live there so he can teach them the requirements of the God of the land. So one of the priests they had deported came and lived in Bethel, and he began to teach them how they should fear the Lord. So again, this is another kind of interesting piece where they've been shipped out, right? God is sending lions in to eat some of these people, and they know enough to at least realize, like, hey, there's a God that is doing this, and is doing this because we don't know what his rules are. And so they send a priest back to teach them. Verse 29. But the people of each nation were still making their own gods in the cities where they lived and putting them in the shrines of the high places that the people of Samaria had made. The men of Babylon made Succoth Benoth, the men of Cuth made Nergal, the men of Hamath made Ashima, the Avites made Nibhaz and Tartak, and the Sepharvites burned their children in the fire. The Adramelech and Anamelech, the gods of Sepharvaim, they feared the Lord, but they also made from their ranks priests for the high places who were working for them at the shrines of the high places. They feared the Lord, but they also worshiped their own gods, according to the practice of the nations from which they had been deported. They are still observing the former practices to this day. None of them fear the Lord or observe the statutes and ordinances, the law and commandments that the Lord had commanded the descendants of Jacob, whom he had given the name of Israel. The Lord made a covenant with Jacob's descendants and commanded them: do not fear other gods, do not bow and worship to them, do not serve them, do not sacrifice to them. Instead, fear the Lord, who brought you from the land of Egypt with great power and an outstretched arm. You are to bow down to him. You are to sacrifice to him. You are to be careful to observe the statutes and ordinances, the law and the commandments he wrote for you. Do not fear other gods. Do not forget the covenant that I have made with you. Do not fear other gods, but fear the Lord your God, and he will rescue you from all your enemies. However, these nations would not listen, but continued observing their former practices. They feared the Lord, but also served their idols. Still today, their children and grandchildren continue doing as their ancestors do. Chapter 18. In the third year of Israel's king Hoshea, son of Elah, Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, became king of Judah. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abi, daughter of Zechariah. He did what was right in the Lord's sight, just as his ancestor David had done. He removed the high places and shattered the sacred pillars and cut down the Asherah poles. He broke into pieces the bronze snake that Moses made, for until then the Israelites were burning incense to it. It was called Nehushtan. Hezekiah relied on the Lord God of Israel. Not one of the kings of Judah was like him, either before him or after him. He remained faithful to the Lord and did not turn from following him, but kept the commands the Lord had commanded Moses. I think this is an interesting, sorry, my mind just like kind of went on a trail as I was reading there. I think this is an interesting tidbit too, talking about you remember in uh, Numbers, I believe it was, when God sends serpents into the camp because Israel disobeyed. Shocker. Um, but he sends serpents in, and he has Moses make a bronze serpent and put it up essentially on a cross and put it up where everyone could see, and then people that came and looked upon it, they would be healed, right? And so this was something that God had told Moses to make, and there was a good purpose behind it. But Israel here has turned it into something that they are worshiping. So even something that maybe God has given you can end up being something that draws you away. Um, it's interesting. Verse 7: The Lord is with him, and wherever he went, he prospered. He rebelled against the king of Assyria and did not serve him. He defeated the Philistines as far as Gaza and its borders, from watchtower to fortified city. In the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Israel's king Hoshea, son of Elah, Assyria's king Shalmaneser marched against Samaria and besieged it. The Assyrians captured it at the end of 3 years. In the 6th year of Hezekiah, which was in the 9th year of King Hoshea, Samaria was captured. The king of Assyria deported the Israelites to Assyria and put them in Halah along the Habor, Gozan's river, and in the cities of the Medes. Because they did not listen to the Lord their God, but violated his covenant, all he had commanded Moses the servant of the Lord, they did not listen and they did not obey. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Assyria's king Sennacherib attacked all the fortified cities of Judah and captured them. So King Hezekiah of Judah sent word to the king of Assyria at Lachish, I have done wrong. Withdraw from me. Whatever you demand from me, I will pay. The king of Assyria demanded 11 tons of silver and 1 ton of gold from King Hezekiah of Judah. So Hezekiah gave him all the silver found in the Lord's temple and of the king's palace. At that time, Hezekiah stripped the gold from the doors of the Lord's sanctuary and from the doorposts, and he had overlaid and gave it to the king of Assyria. Then the king of Assyria sent the field marshal, the chief of staff, and his royal spokesman along the massive army from Lachish to King Hezekiah at Jerusalem. They advanced and came to Jerusalem, and they took their position by the aqueduct of the upper pool, by the road to the launderer's field. They called for the king, but Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, who was in charge of the palace, Shebna, the court secretary, and Joah, son of Asaph, the court historian, came out to them. Then the royal spokesman said to them, Tell Hezekiah, this is what the great king, the king of Assyria, says. What are you relying on? You think mere words are strategy and strength for war? Who are you now relying on so that you have rebelled against me? Now look, you are relying on Egypt, that splintered reed of a staff. They will pierce the hand of anyone who grabs it and leans on it. This is what Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is to all who rely on him. Suppose you say to me, We rely on the Lord our God. Isn't he the one whose high places and altars Hezekiah removed, saying to Judah and to Jerusalem, He must worship at this altar in Jerusalem? So now make a bargain with me, with my master, the king of Assyria. I'll give you 2,000 horses if you're able to supply riders for them. How then can you drive back a single officer among the least of my master's servants? How can you rely on Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? Now have I attacked this place to destroy it without the Lord's approval. The Lord said to me, Attack this land and destroy it. Then Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, Shebna, and Joah said to the royal spokesman, Please speak to your servants in Aramaic, since we understand it. Don't speak to us in Hebrew, within earshot of the people on the wall. But the royal spokesman said to them, Has my master sent me to speak these words only to your master and to you? Hasn't he also sent me to the men who sit on the wall, destined with you to eat their own excrement and drink their own urine? The royal spokesman stood and called out loudly in Hebrew, Hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. This is what the king says. Don't let Hezekiah deceive you. He can't rescue you from my power. Don't let Hezekiah persuade you to rely on the Lord by saying, Certainly the Lord will rescue us. This city will not be handed over to the king of Assyria. Don't listen to Hezekiah, for this is what the king of Assyria says, Make peace with me and surrender to me. Then each of you may eat from his own vine and his own fig tree, and each may drink water from his own cistern until I come to take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of olive trees and honey, so that you may live and not die. But don't listen to Hezekiah when he misleads you, saying, The Lord will rescue us. Has any of the gods of the nations ever rescued his land from the power of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim, Hena, and Eva? Have they rescued Samaria from my power? Who among all the gods of the land has rescued his land from my power? So will the Lord rescue Jerusalem from my power. But the people kept silent. They did not answer him at all, for the king's command was, don't answer him. Then Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, who was in charge of the place, Shebna, the court secretary, and Joah, son of Asaph, the court historian, came to Hezekiah with their clothes torn and reported to him the words of the royal spokesman. Okay, that is it for the reading for today. But we do have some questions. I was trying to get through it a little bit because those are lengthier passages. So the questions. Question 1. Ahaz's adoption of the pagan altar in chapter 16 desecrates God's worship. How does this act deepen our theological understanding of idolatry as a betrayal of God's exclusive claim? And what modern parallels might we consider in our devotion? One that comes to mind immediately is New Age stuff. I know there are some groups, I've mentioned this before. I've mentioned my name before. Bethel is one that's done this. They specifically say, I don't remember what book it is. They had a book out. I think they may have removed it because Mike Winger did a video on the book itself and kind of exposed it. Physics of Heaven, I think. But anyways, they had this book, and in this book, they talk about how we are called to go into the new age and get this stuff back, claim it back for God, because there's power there and we need to claim it back for God. But the thing is, some of the stuff that they're saying we need to claim back for God are things that God has explicitly said no. So this is, I can't think of a more spot on example of this in our modern day. Doing stuff that God has explicitly condemned and saying that you're doing it in favor of God. Christian tarot cards, right? Things like that. Trying to talk to the deceased. Really, really bad stuff. I think that's one example. And God does not take lightly to this. He decides how you are to worship him. You don't get to. He is the only one that gets to choose that, and he is the only one that deserves any worship in the first place. So, question 2. The fall of Israel in chapter 17 fulfills God's warnings through the prophets. How might this exile challenge us to reflect on the theological interplay between divine forbearance and the inevitability of justice when covenant fidelity is abandoned? Um, you know, God is patient. God wants to allow time for people to get it right. I think God knows people don't get it right the first time, usually not the second time or the third time either. And he wants to allow time for that to happen. But he also knows when the time is up, when you need to have a change, when you need to see something. And when you don't, he is able to move on from that. Um, I think this falls back to God's understanding of us, of our decisions, of what we do, our hearts, all of that is greater than even our own. So when God makes that decision to move on, it's the right decision. It's a just decision, and he has given due time. Question 3. Despite Israel's exile, Judah persists, hinting at God's enduring promise. How does the preservation invite us to wrestle with the theological tension between corporate judgment and the hope of individual remnant faithfulness, pointing to Christ's redemptive work? Um, so we saw this with Elisha a little bit, right? When he said that he was the only one left. He thought he was the only one left, but God had, or Elijah, God had remnant still. I talked about there were prophets that were hidden in a cave, and he wasn't the only one left. There are times, and I see. I don't like doing this. I do see a little parallel with our modern culture, right? Especially like maybe 2 years ago. Um, it seems like very hostile towards Christianity. You can't be a Christian. Even people that are outspoken as Christian, a lot of them are stepping away from actual Christianity. And there's a lot of people that are kind of getting along to, or go along to get along type mentality, embracing sin and allowing sin. Um, it's not popular to stand on God's word and call sin sin, especially when the sin is popular and is approved by most of the society. Um, that's something that you have to be willing to do. Um, I got really off topic with that one. Um, but I do think that the remnant that are left that are faithful can bring about change for the entire nation. It doesn't have to just be a constant downward trend. Like there can be, you would call it like a revival, right? People coming back to God. Um, but yeah, that is it for today. Appreciate everyone watching and listening up to this point. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I always enjoy hearing from people, reading comments and things like that, interacting when I have a chance to. If this has been a blessing to you, why don't you consider passing it along, spreading it to somebody else? Word of mouth is the best way the podcast spreads. So you can pass this on and someone else can start watching and get something out of it and maybe be blessed by it as well. We want to give resources for people to continue reading their Bible daily and sticking with a daily Bible reading plan. That's the whole purpose of this Bible in a Year series that we're doing. So tomorrow we'll be back in Second Kings again. We're getting close to the end of Second Kings, but we still have a couple days left. So I will see you then. Thanks. God bless.